Donald Trump at his rally in Florida. Classic Trump, I suppose it's fair to say. Let's speak to Greg, Swenson and Edward Hardy now. Greg, let's start with you. Quite a bizarre spectacle, really. I watched that rally in Florida, Greg, and I wondered if it was helpful, really, if it perhaps played into the hands of some of his critics by having a really tightly packed gathering of supporters all together without masks.
Yeah, Darryl, I suppose you have a point, and I think it looks like, the election might come down to a few metrics or a few sort of party lines, and there's no doubt that the Democrats are the party of Joe and Kamala with the oversized black masks standing 30 feet apart from each other, outdoors, indoors, doesn't matter. And the Republicans are the party of reopening and reopening the economy. I'm not suggesting one is right, one is wrong, but look at the red states and the blue states. Look at the economic recovery in the red states.
Science does suggest that one is right and one is wrong, though, doesn't it, Greg? And that's the problem. If you're watching this as an American and you're thinking...
Absolutely not true. Follow the science used to be the metric back in March when they said flatten the curve. And then they flattened the curve and they decided that the blue states decided to keep lockdown. There's very little correlation between the lockdown states and the states that have reopened.
But in terms of how it looks, though, Greg,
that's for sure.
Let's talk about how it looks, Greg. Is
it
the right image?
Is fine. I wish they would. I wish they'd follow the data.
Is it okay? Well, Ed, Greg says there. I mean, Greg's kind of relatively comfortable with how it looks, and this is his lifeblood. It's hard to deny the energy and the enthusiasm that this man has on full display, back in his natural habitat. Also, Trump pulling into a statistical tie in Florida, by the way, Ed. Concerning scenes, probably, for the Democrats.
Democrats were always prepared for the election to get closer in the polling as we approached Election Day, and no one's surprised that that's been happening. But we've seen early voting showing there's significant enthusiasm out there on the Democratic side, and turning up and voting for their candidates. When you look at the rally that Donald Trump held, it was just shameful, his approach to jump straight back on the campaign trail when he still won't tell anyone when his last negative coronavirus test is, when he's making these claims about being immune to the virus when there's no science to back that up, when he's holding gatherings with supporters, not asking them to wear masks. If Donald Trump stood on stage, put on a mask, and asked all of his supporters to do the same, they would have followed in that crowd. He can do that, and he chooses not to. He's holding these potentially super spreader events like he did at the White House, and it's concerning. And he's putting people at risk.
But the people who go there take their own risks, don't they? And they make their own decisions, Edward. And it's a powerful tool for Trump, isn't it?
It's a powerful tool for Trump. It's a dangerous tool for the rest of America. And you have to accept that if he's going out there and bringing people together in these small environments where they're not socially distanced, they're not wearing protective equipment, he is putting people at risk, and they're taking the risk themselves. They're choosing to go there, but he shouldn't be encouraging his supporters to do that. He should be showing leadership. He's the president. He's not
square. All square on that one. I think you'll view that Florida rally as you view it. Town hall debates, lads. We've not had a debate yet. We might get one next week if we're lucky. But we did have both Donald Trump and Joe Biden facing questions in a town hall style debate. Both of them batting away quite key questions about separate things. Both of them, I think, mainly trying not to answer questions rather than answering them. Most notably for Donald Trump, declining to disavow the online conspiracy group QAnon, sidestep questions on his coronavirus diagnosis and what he owes on tax. Joe Biden did plenty of sidestepping himself. Most notably, wouldn't divulge his plans for a Supreme Court, which is a real hot issue at this election. Both are on the defensive on their records as well. Greg, let me start with Donald Trump. There's a quote here from the New York Times, and I'm going to save you the attack, Greg, by pointing out that the New York Times.
The New York Times, really? I'm shocked.
Let me save you the attack. They are a publication that have been heavily critical of Trump in their editorials. But actually, just let that to one side for a sec. It might give us some food for thought for Trump and his team, this one. This quote says, in one of his final primetime television events before Election Day, President Trump, who is trailing in national and battleground polls, offered little new to voters who may still be undecided, speaking positively about a far-right conspiracy theory movement and staking out positions on the coronavirus that are at odds with both the scientific consensus and public opinion. And the New York Times bit aside, Greg, and I take the point on that, but doesn't that perfectly summarise Trump's campaign in that he hasn't really held out anything like the olive branch that he needed to, and it does feel like on a lot of his central messaging he is swimming in the opposite direction to America. Is that going to be a problem for Trump's camp?
Well, I agree with the first premise, but not the second. I don't think he's out of step with most people in America. Look, he's polling at 45. He won the last election when he was polling lower than that at close to 40. So, but I do agree that he's not messaging as effectively as he could. And it's a shame because, look, the press isn't going to help him. We know that. And I think that you have to sort of price that in. The press maybe is treating him much more aggressively than they have other Republicans in the past, but you have to bake that in. And he's just got to message better. He could run on his record and actually talk about, the economic successes, talk about the Supreme Court and the other, judiciary appointments.
Why isn't he then?
So
is that a conscious decision to think to not do that? Or
he's very unfiltered, and I think he also broke my cardinal rule that presidential candidates should never dance on stage ever. You never saw Barack Obama do that. You never saw George W. do that. But look, all kidding aside, I think that if he could message more effectively and talk about what he's actually accomplished, that would be much more effective.
Okay.
But it doesn't help himself when he gets he goes off on these rants.
Sure.
But also the press isn't kind to him. By the way, asking you repeatedly to denounce, white supremacists, which he's done and he's repeated and clarified, but it's kind of offensive at some point. It's, when did you stop beating your wife? It's just not fair.
Fair point. Greg, Edward, on Biden, I mean, plenty of sidestepping himself. You wouldn't answer or wouldn't give a straight answer, at least to some very serious, legitimate questions about his plans for the Supreme Court. There was a famous quote from Bill Clinton when Tony Blair came to him for some advice in 2001. He was well ahead in the poll in the general election in the UK, and he said, Bill, what do I do? How do I campaign here? And Bill Clinton said to him, if you are 20 points ahead, campaign like you're 20 points behind. And Joe Biden isn't doing that. He's trying to avoid a banana skin. He's trying basically to be to not be seen and say as little as he possibly can. Edward, it may seem effective on the surface, but it's also a very risky game, isn't it? We've seen plenty of times where that has failed.
Comparing Donald Trump and Joe Biden's deflections during that town hall debate that should have gone ahead, but they held their separate town halls, comparing their deflections is like comparing chalk and cheese here, because Donald Trump refused to disavow QAnon and their baseless conspiracy theories. He refused to call out their nonsensical claim that Trump's trying to save the world from a cult of satanic pedophiles. Whereas Joe Biden simply pushed back and refused to engage with this absurd accusation that Democrats will pack the court, which Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have never said that they will do. In fact,
it's a legit question, though, isn't it? That he struggles to answer, or he tries to sidestep as best he possibly can.
Well, he did answer it during the town hall. He said, "I've not been a fan of court packing. I'm not a fan."
Oh, well, that's not to say I'm not going to do it, is it? He could say I'm not going to do it. Why can't Edward? Why can't he say no? I'm not going to pack the Supreme Court.
Because he has said that he does not want to pack the Supreme Court. He will not.
Doesn't want to. Not a fan of it. It's not the same thing, though, is it?
What the Democratic Party has been talking about here, and I wrote an article on this actually this week, is that the Democratic Party wants to counteract the Republican Party's court stacking approach and is having a serious conversation that needs to be had in America about this, that the Republican Party has repeatedly bended the rules to stack the courts at all levels with partisan appointees. Americans deserve a balanced court, and Americans should be supporting a balanced court. The judiciary should be above politics. It shouldn't be a tool of it. And that's what the Democratic Party has talked about.
He could probably say that more firmly, couldn't he? Listen,
filling the Supreme Supreme Court with liberals.
Okay, listen. Okay, yeah, fair. You made the point, Edward. Listen, I want to. We've got very, very tight on time, but I really want to get this point in because I think it's important about the Ukraine email that surfaced this week. So President Trump has been repeatedly accusing the Biden family of wrongdoing in regards to Ukraine and China while Joe Biden was vice president. The issue resurfaced this week as well, we know, following a New York Post article that focused on an alleged email in which an advisor from a Ukrainian energy company apparently thanked Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, for inviting him to meet his father. A very contentious issue previously resurfacing this week. Ed, it does seem to suggest that there was a contact and a relationship that was long denied by the Biden team, doesn't it? And it's been a very inconvenient week for them on that front.
The New York Post story about Hunter Biden is false, and quite possibly, according to US intelligence, part of a Russian disinformation campaign. The Ukrainian prosecutor wasn't actually investigating Burisma. He was complicit in corruption. That's why Joe Biden called for him to be fired. Facts don't matter in this Hunter Biden conspiracy theory. As Steve Bannon famously once said, and I won't use the expletive in his quote, but people can look it up, flood the zone with to distract attention from Trump's real wrongdoing. That's what they do. They go there and they throw as much mud at their opponents. But the FBI are looking into the possibility that these were forged emails, that these are a disinformation campaign. And Hunter Biden's attorney has made clear that they have no idea where this came from. And he said, you, quote, certainly cannot credit anything that Rudy Giuliani provided.
So a strong rebuttal of them. Listen, Greg, we've got about 60 seconds left.
Sure.
Edward's kind of right there. This does have the hallmarks of some of the stories that we've seen about Trump, and we've seen Trump rile against, and we've seen you rile against as well. It's incomplete. It's got holes. It's laced with hearsay. If you were to judge it by the same standard that you would some of the stories about Trump, you would dismiss this as fake news, wouldn't you, really?
Well, look, I can't speak to the actual emails. I mean, that it's hard to prove from one article in the New York Post. But what is very clear, there is absolutely no doubt that he was paid by the Ukrainians, by the Chinese specifically, and by the richest woman in Russia, who was also the ex-wife of the former mayor of Moscow. There's no doubt about that stuff. And I think Trump made a mistake when he had the chance to talk about it. Instead, he talked about the coke and the hookers. But look, there is no dispute about that. So the Post story is going to be hard to prove at this point.
And will it make a difference?
Imagine if Don Jr. had done one of these things.
Listen, Greg, we're out of time. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much. Edward Hardy as well. Really, really appreciate your time. We'll be back on the road to the White House next week. It's hotting up, boys. Not much longer to go.